you are an instant noodle enthusiast or a Maggi enthusiast, you may not like this. India's food regulator has now shot down reports this morning of a clean chit to Nestle's iconic Maggi noodles. Food safety watchdog FSSAI today said it has not given any clean chit to the banned Maggi noodles. Reports are now being rubbished which claim that one of its own labs had cleared Maggi this morning. The food regulator has also questioned the clearance to India-made Maggi from labs based in UK and Singapore. Remember, Maggi was banned after tests showed excessive levels of MSG and lead. How are we to interpret all this? How does this, one day you say it's been banned, next day you say it's not been given a clean chit? Gurcharan Das, former head of Procter & Gamble, joins me. Also joining me is Bejon Mishra. He is, of course, chairman of the Cell for Consumer Education and Advocacy. Appreciate both of you joining us. Gurcharan Das, what do you make out of this? Reports in the morning say that an FSSAI lab has cleared Maggi. By evening, we are told no clean chit has been given. What's the message that's going out to the wider world?
Well, this is a tragic story in which everyone seems to have lost. I mean, the message is really going out about the unpredictability of our environment. You know, we created the state to bring predictability, but it's that very state that creates unpredictability, whether it's in this case or in the cases of tax terrorism. So, I mean, it's of course been badly handled by both sides. You've got an overreaction by an adversarial regulator, and you have an underreaction by Nestle. And therefore, I mean, I think it's arrogance on both sides, where if they could have sat down together, they could have done the tests collaboratively, they could have found out. I mean, this was a science, it's an issue of science, where you have evidence in front of you. And you know what, the fact of the matter is that Nestle's brand has been destroyed. India's reputation has been destroyed. It's been compared to the kind of tax terrorism that we did. And the Indian consumer, who had a nice product and they loved it, have been deprived of it.
Hold on.
So
that's
it's a story where
that's a good point on which we to take to Bejon Mishra. The Indian consumer, he seems to have suffered. Indian economy has suffered. Harsimrat Kaur has gone on record to say, without mentioning the big elephant in the room of the food processing industry, the FSSAI, I would say a lot needs to be done to remove the recent roadblocks, or I fear a fear psychosis in the industry. We are told losses could go up to 600 to 700 crores in the food processing industry, and the consumer doesn't know. Do I go and eat a Maggi product or not? In the morning I am told go and eat it, in the evening I am told no clean chit. Gujarat has extended the ban by 1 month, other states are lifting the ban. It's crazy what's going on with Maggi. Across the world Maggi is being cleared. In India we are getting conflicting signals. What do you make of it?
You see, when we made this law, this new law, Food Safety and Standards Act, we wanted to bring in elements of self-regulation. We wanted to bring in responsible business. You know, unfortunately, you know, food is a state subject, and every state has their own say or the matter they want to take it forward. Really the crux of the story is that the food processing industry in this episode has actually lost their credibility, in the sense that they are not transparent, they don't become accountable to the consumers. And
you're blaming Maggi and Nestle. You're saying they
absolutely.
You're not going to blame FSSAI.
Not
you're
at
not
all.
going to blame, as Gurcharan Das is saying, this is a form of tax terrorism which is going on.
No. I don't agree. I don't agree, because regulator was not supposed to be coming in. It was the industry which was supposed to behave themselves. Now, if you give a loan license to somebody to manufacture, if you have umpteen number of factories in the country where you outsource your production and you don't keep any control on their quality, then naturally these things
But how can you have a regulator which says one thing in one state, one thing in another state, says something in the morning, says something in the evening? Maggi's been cleared in United Kingdom, Canada, Singapore, Australia. So it's only in India that we seem to have a problem, and there seems to be some kind of a national...
No, there's no problem. You see, Rajdeep, you must understand, all the products which are going to UK, Singapore or overseas are manufactured in a particular plant which has been approved, accredited and meant for exports. And there are several other plants which do not adhere to the good manufacturing practices. So what we as consumers in India feel that we are being undermined.
So you believe Nestle has failed the consumer?
Absolutely.
You know, Gurcharan Das, here is the twist being given by consumer activists saying, forget about, you know, blaming the food regulator. It's time multinationals were more responsive to consumer concerns. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, of course we should be concerned with food safety. But you know, my experience, when I was an executive who worked for a multinational company for 30 years. And in 3 countries, I actually competed against Nestle, where P&G had food products.
Right.
And I must tell you, when you are competing with another company, you really learn to respect that company. And I learned to respect Nestle. And you know, from my experience, our internal standards at Procter & Gamble were higher than the local government standards in these countries. And so I find it very bizarre, very hard to understand that a product that's being sold around the world in dozens of countries should find a problem only in India. Now this is very, very hard to understand for me. Now I have not done the tests, I have not seen the tests. I'm just speaking for the fact that this is my reaction. And but I also agree with the gentleman who is the consumer activist that I think that a situation like this in fact should be a wake-up call to our country. Absolutely. A wake-up call not to have the kind of terrorism that we are seeing, but to raising standards. And it should also remind us that our real problems are those with water, with air, and those are the things that
I take your point. I take your point, and I want to give a final word to you, Mr. Mishra, because, you know, out there are people who want to know, should I go and eat Maggi or not? Am I going to go by a food regulator? And in a country where you know what food safety norms are if you eat street food, what is going on at the moment is damaging the food processing industry and India's credibility in the global market. Should we be concerned about that or not?
No, we should be concerned, and that's why I'm happy that such an episode has happened. And now the consumer should feel more comfortable, because now I think the industry will wake up. And as Mr. Gurucharan Das has mentioned, you see, I wish we had more Gurucharan Dases today. But we don't have such responsible CEOs in the food processing industry today. You see, today I must tell you and I must confess to you that the industry doesn't come out very clearly in terms of transparency and accountability to the consumers, in terms of quality especially. So if they don't come out on their own, then naturally the regulator has to, give a stick, and has to reprimand them if they find that something is going wrong, which they normally leave them to do it on their own under this new law, but they haven't done in a responsible manner, which they should have done.
Let's leave it there. Blame game, the time is over. Clearly this entire episode has cost the country, it's cost Nestle, it's cost the consumer. Gurcharan Das, Bijon Mishra, appreciate your joining us on our Face Off tonight.